There is a moment in The Lord of the Rings that never made it to the screen, not in the theatrical cut, not in the extended editions. And yet, it is one of the most quietly devastating scenes in the entire tale. It is not a moment of war or heroism. It is a moment of stillness and almost redemption. J.R.R. Tolkien himself admitted that as he wrote this passage, he wept, not from the weight of death or the ruin of cities, but from the heartbreak of a single touch. And what might have followed? We find ourselves near the very borders of Mordor. The black land looms, and the road grows crueler with each step. Frodo and Sam, spent from their climb through the perilous pass of Cirith Ungol, collapse upon a narrow ledge to rest. Frodo's head lies in Sam's lap, and Sam, still keeping guard as best he can, drifts into uneasy sleep. Their faces, in that brief pause from pain, are still and at peace. And then Gollum returns, not creeping with malice, not muttering about precious. He comes quietly, almost reverently. His eyes are not sharp with cunning, but dulled with weariness. For once, there is no performance, no manipulation, only the silent presence of a creature caught between what he was and what he has become. He sees them sleeping, two small, unguarded beings, alone in a world of ruin. And something inside him breaks. He draws closer, slowly. His long fingers twitch. Then, with a movement so delicate it could hardly be called a gesture, he reaches out and touches Frodo's knee. It is not theft. It is not violence. It is a touch full of memory, of longing, of something that might once have been love. No one sees him. No one is there to judge. There is no audience to deceive. And so, for the first time in an age, what stirs in Gollum's heart is real. In that flickering instant, he is not Gollum. He is Smeagol, a weary, hobbit-shaped creature, shrunken by time and torment, reaching for a connection that has not yet been entirely lost. This is the moment Tolkien spoke of, the moment that brought tears to the one who created it. Because here, at the edge of Mordor, salvation trembled, just out of reach. If this kind of storytelling speaks to something in you, something beyond good and evil, something about the quiet struggles that shape us more than any sword ever could, consider subscribing. There are stories within the stories, and we're just beginning to uncover them. The road ahead, like the path they climbed, grows darker still, but it is in these shadows that the deepest truths are found. In the hush of that moment, where mercy hovered and the past might have bent toward healing, Gollum remained still, his trembling hand resting softly on Frodo's knee. There was no malice in him then, no trickery, only the ache of a soul remembering what it was to be seen, and perhaps loved. But then, Frodo stirred. A soft sound escaped his lips, nothing more than a breath shaped by uneasy dreams. Yet it was enough. Sam woke. His eyes flew open, trained not on Frodo, but on the figure crouched over him. He saw only the hunched back, the clawed fingers, the sharp profile outlined in the dim light. The guardian within him surged forward. There was no time for thought, no room for reflection, only instinct. "What are you up to?" Sam barked, voice rough and accusing. Gollum recoiled, the spell shattered. Whatever fragile strand had tethered him to the light snapped in an instant. His expression, moments ago marked by pain and longing, twisted into something harder, older. A green glint flared beneath heavy lids. He fell back on his haunches, hissing softly. Sam did not see the tremor in Gollum's fingers, nor the ghost of Smeagol in his eyes. He saw only danger, and perhaps, in some unspoken place within him, he saw a rival. "I dare say," Sam growled, Sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain." It is easy to understand Sam's reaction. His loyalty to Frodo had been forged in fire, unshakable and fierce. He had seen Gollum's darker side too many times to trust him. And in that moment, he believed he was protecting his friend. But what he did not see, what he could not yet understand, was that Frodo had changed. Where Sam still saw Gollum as a threat, Frodo had begun to see a reflection. He recognized the torment that twisted Gollum. He understood the slow erosion of self that came from bearing the ring. Frodo had begun to pity him, even love him, in the way one might love a lost part of themselves. And that was the difference. Tolkien writes in letter 246 that Sam, for all his loyalty, was cocky and a little conceited, though his pride was deeply entwined with his devotion to Frodo. But this devotion, so strong, so pure, had within it the seeds of possessiveness. It blinded him to Frodo's inner transformation, and more tragically, to the flickering goodness still alive in Gollum. At that exact moment, with nothing but stone and silence around them, Sam's rough words didn't simply hurt Gollum, they condemned him. The old hobbit inside, the Smeagol that Frodo's mercy had coaxed into the light, was driven back into shadow. And from that moment forward, Gollum ceased to waver. His choice was made. He would lead them to Shelob. He would betray them. He would take back the ring. If you're moved by the quiet tragedies that shape the fate of great stories, consider joining us here. These aren't just tales of battles and thrones. They're woven from the unseen moments where the heart breaks and history turns. There is no villain in this moment, only misunderstanding, only love that failed to see its reflection in the broken eyes of another. And that is the most human tragedy of all. The path to darkness is rarely sudden. It unfolds in quiet moments. One missed gesture, one word too sharp, one mercy withheld. For Gollum, the breaking point did not come with betrayal, but with misunderstanding. And its seed was planted days before, in a place known as the Forbidden Pool. By this point in their journey, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum had reached the land of Ithilien and fallen into the hands of Captain Faramir of Gondor. Gollum had been following in the shadows, unseen, driven by both hunger and obsession. Eventually, he was captured as he bathed in a sacred pool, a place barred to all by Gondorian law. To trespass, there was death. But Frodo intervened. He pleaded with Faramir to spare Gollum's life, not once, but twice. He offered no excuses, only understanding. And for Gollum, it was a betrayal. He had trusted Frodo. He had, in his own broken way, loved him. Frodo's presence at the capture felt like trickery, even if Frodo had meant only to help. As he was dragged from the pool, beaten and bound, Gollum cried out in confusion and rage. His pain was not just physical, it was spiritual. The one person who had ever shown him pity now seemed complicit in his humiliation. Sam, watching from the sidelines, felt no sympathy. He called Gollum slinker and stinker. He mocked him. He distrusted every word, every glance. To Sam, Gollum was a threat to Frodo's safety, a snake waiting to strike. And yet Frodo, tired, weathered, wiser, saw something different. He saw the tragedy of a creature twisted by the ring, yes, but not beyond hope. Tolkien, in his reflections, calls this Frodo's education to the nobility of service to the unlovable. Frodo was learning something Sam had not yet grasped, that the highest form of compassion is not reserved for the noble or the innocent, but for the wretched, for those hardest to love. And that kind of mercy changes people. It had begun to change Gollum. The kindness Frodo showed had stirred something ancient in him, a memory of Smeagol, long buried. Faramir too saw this. Before releasing them, he made it clear. The only reason Gollum was still alive was because of Frodo's mercy, and Gollum understood that. He whispered it, even as they left the safety of Gondor's woods. "Nice master," he said. "Smeagol was only joking. Always forgives, he does. Yes, yes, even nice master's little tricks. Oh yes, nice master." These were not the words of a schemer. They were the uncertain utterances of a soul unsure whether to hope again or give up forever. But hope, for all its light, is fragile. If you're finding meaning in these quiet echoes of Middle-earth, where character is shaped not on the battlefield, but in the unseen struggles of mercy and mistrust, consider subscribing. These are the turning points that few remember, but they are the ones that matter most. The road was narrowing. The pass was drawing near, and Gollum, torn between the Smeagol he might reclaim and the Gollum he could no longer escape, had yet to choose. But choice would not wait forever. There are moments in every soul's journey when the future teeters on the edge of a decision, not between good and evil, but between the person one was and the person one might become. For Gollum, that moment came in the black hollow beneath the stars, in a place the hobbits never truly saw. It came in a debate, whispered not aloud, but in the fractured chambers of his own mind. They had passed through the dead marshes, the foul vapors clinging to their skin and the faces of the drowned peering up from the waters. Frodo slept. Sam dreamed uneasily. But Gollum sat awake, speaking softly into the night, not to the hobbits, but to himself. "We wants it, but not yet. Perhaps not. She might help. Yes, no, not that way," he whimpered. "Yes, we wants it. We wants it." Each time the darker voice gained ground, Gollum's long hand crept toward Frodo. Each time the gentler voice stirred, that hand was pulled back. Finally, both arms reached up, clawing not outward, but toward his own throat, torn between desire and restraint. This was the debate Tolkien later called the debate in the slag hole. It is perhaps the rawest glimpse we ever receive into Gollum's internal war. Here, he is not plotting. He is pleading with himself. Smeagol, the hobbit that once was, rises in him like a dying ember. He does not want to betray Frodo. Not truly. There is something in Frodo's eyes, in Frodo's voice, that has touched him. Something that no one else in Middle-earth has offered since the ring first came into his hands, understanding. But the ring has sunk its claws too deep, and every delay, every hesitation, weakens him. He is temporizing, as Tolkien put it, putting off the final decision in the hope that something might make it for him. In truth, he doesn't know what to choose, Frodo or the ring, kindness or power, connection or possession. The tragedy is not that Gollum chooses evil, it is that he cannot choose at all. He drifts, hoping the answer will come. But in Middle-earth, the roads of inaction are often the most dangerous. Sam, asleep nearby, cannot hear this war. He sees only what Gollum shows by day. Suspicion clouds his heart, and it is not an unjust suspicion. But he does not see the trembling hands, the quiet cries, the way Gollum claws at himself rather than at Frodo. Tolkien knew the weight of this moment. He once wrote that, by temporizing, by not fixing the still not wholly corrupt Smeagol will toward good, he weakened himself. And so the window closed, slowly, painfully, but not yet completely, not yet. And if you're still here, drawn into the deeper currents of this tale, where even the villains tremble with humanity, you're part of something rare. Stories like this are not about good versus evil, but about choice, consequence, and the fragile thread of mercy. Thank you for walking this path with care. The pass lay ahead. The lair awaited. But in the hush before betrayal, there was still a final chance. A sliver of light beneath the weight of shadow. They had reached the knees of the mountains, where Mordor's shadow fell long and cold. The path to Shelob's lair wound upward, jagged and cruel. And still, Gollum had not made his choice. Not fully. The night was deathly still when he slipped away. Frodo and Sam, weary beyond measure, had paused to rest. Sam sat upright, cradling Frodo's head in his lap. The two hobbits were silent as stone, their faces softened by sleep, touched only by the pale wash of starlight. Time seemed to pause around them. And from the dark, Gollum crept back. Not Gollum, perhaps. Not entirely. Something else. Someone else. He looked at them, not as prey, not as obstacles, but as beings he could not quite understand. His expression shifted, and for a moment his eyes lost their gleam. They turned dull and grey, ancient and mournful. A spasm of pain twisted his face. He shook his head, as if arguing silently with something deep within. Then slowly, with great care, he reached out. His hand hovered, trembling, over Frodo's knee. When it touched, the gesture was so gentle, so human, it could only be called a caress. And in that heartbeat, Smeagol returned. He was not a monster. He was not a guide or a thief. He was an old, broken hobbit, lost to the ages, standing at the threshold of his own redemption. There was no audience, no need to deceive. His affection was genuine, unseen and unspoken, but true. Had the moment held, had the silence remained, perhaps Smeagol would have turned back. Perhaps he would have chosen Frodo over the ring. Perhaps, but the moment did not hold. Frodo stirred in his sleep, and Sam awoke. He saw the shape hovering over his master and knew only danger. His voice came sharp, accusing, "Hey you, what are you up to?" Gollum flinched. The contact broke. The gleam returned to his eyes, green, feral, spider-like. He recoiled, and with that, the final thread snapped. Tolkien once said, "I wept when I wrote that." He did not weep for a battle lost or a kingdom fallen. He wept for the hobbit that might have been saved. For the moment, that was almost enough. It was never about whether Gollum deserved redemption. It was about whether anyone, even the most wretched, might still be reached by mercy. And for a heartbeat beneath the stars, he was. But mercy is fragile. One rough word can shatter it. And so Shelob's lair became inevitable, not because evil triumphed, but because understanding faltered, because love, untempered by grace, failed to see what lingered in the dark. We should not blame Sam. His heart was true. His instincts were protective. And yet that is what makes this so painful. He meant no harm. He simply did not know what that moment demanded. He saw a threat, not a soul. Stories endure because they remind us of what might have been. If we had spoken softer, listened longer, reached just a little farther. If this story touched something in you, something tender and true, consider staying with us. Subscribe if you haven't. Not for battles or heroes, but for the quiet truths hidden between them. The forgotten moments that shape the very world. Because not all tears are an evil, and not every villain begins as one.